Hello and welcome to Blythe Business News. For this edition, I'm joined by Sean Wade, who is Chief Executive of Power Metal Resources, listed in London with a symbol of POW on the AIM market, and a market capitalisation of around £16.5 million sterling. Sean, welcome back on the show. You've recently put out a commercial update. Give us a quick update of what's in there and what are you saying about the company?
Great. Well, listen, first of all, thanks, Tim. Thanks very much for having me back. It's great to be here. Look, it was great to be able to put out this commercial update. We did it, I think, just slightly over a week ago. Power Metal is a complicated business. We've got a broad portfolio and there's a lot going on, at all times in all the different areas. So, and I know people like to be kept up to date with what's going on. So it's very important that we get messages across of what's happening in the business. So a few things I just want to highlight from it. First of all, in terms of exploration, we've talked about uranium exploration activities in and around the Athabasca Basin. That's underway. And that's very exciting for us because we're doing some early stage work there where we're going to be able to generate some good results, which we hope we'll be able to talk about over the course of, the late summer and the autumn period. So that's number one. We're doing some advanced exploration at our Tati Goldfields project in Botswana as well. But there's a lot of other corporate activity, various discussions going on across the business in terms of taking some of our key portfolio assets forward. Malopo Farms, for example, we're in multi-party discussions there. We've talked about New Ballarat, I think, about the joint venture there and I hope to move that to an IPO. And just going back to the point about uranium, we've also announced the appointment of Beaumont Cornish as a financial advisor to help us get that business listed. So we've talked about the listing, what we call UEE, and that's now well underway. In terms of other IPO activities, I think everybody knows First Development Resources is now very well advanced. We're very actively in the marketing phase for that, and we'll be updating the market soon as to timing of the IPO. But that's going very well with very good interest, and we're constantly looking at other opportunities to add value in the portfolio. The other thing we announced as part of the update was our application for a US OTC listing.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. So just talk us through what's the rationale for going for an OTC listing in North America?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, as people know, we did a placing back in May, and Rick Rule took part in that and is now a major shareholder. Is now a 4.5% shareholder. And what Rick does also, apart from having brought some capital into the business and some great expertise and help for us, he also brings with him a lot of investment followers. And I think we'll go on to talk about the Symposium in a moment. But look, the fundamental point is, and it's the same for any company, is you need to make it as easy as possible for people to invest. If people find it difficult to instruct their broker or to buy shares, they're going to move on and find something else to invest in. So if we want to drive liquidity and find new buyers of the shares, which is absolutely crucial for us, then we need to make that as easy as possible. Now, what the US OTC listing will do will make it much easier for US and other North American investors to invest in the stock. It's a very common route, obviously, for companies that have North American investors. We're very excited to have welcomed some of them onto the register already. And we're undertaking this process. Now, there's no guarantee, I should say, and we say that in the announcement, that the application is successful. We should be clear about that. But the application is underway, and we are looking forward to updating shareholders on that going forward.
And I guess having assets in North America also makes sense to make it easier for North American investors to buy the stock.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, particularly if we look at, Gold and Metal, where we still own 60%, is focused in Nevada. And obviously Gold Metal has its own shareholder base as well, but the uranium portfolio and the UEE listing will really bring focus on the business from North American investors. So that's absolutely right, and that's a key motivation.
Okay, you've also had a very positive research note published by Resolve Research. What are they saying about you? What are their highlights when they look at power?
Well, it's very exciting actually, and we're very pleased to be able to do this because we've been working with Resolve to get this note out, and they've done a fantastic job. I mean, fundamentally, what they've come up with is a valuation on the current portfolio of 3.3p. Now, without checking the current share price, I think it's around about 0.85, 0.9, something like that. So there's clear upside for investors there. Now, what they do in the note is they go through the portfolio as people will understand it. Obviously based on all the publicly available information. They describe the assets. They talk about the potential for discoveries, the likelihood of those, the potential for corporate activities coming to fruition. They look at the balance sheet growth opportunity, which is something that we like to talk about a lot. And they've come up with a 3.3p. So I mean, you're looking at sort of 4 times upside thereabouts, on the current portfolio, and that's obviously before we, recycle our capital and look for further opportunities. So, I think it highlights the fact that the shares are very undervalued. I mean, it's not really my job to talk about the share price in that sense, obviously, but nonetheless, I think this is the conclusion of the research, and I hope that investors will find it useful and a way of guiding them into the story.
I want to talk about Rick Rule for a moment. I know that Rick, through one of his companies, is an investor, but I'll get to that in a moment. But you've just come back from the Rule Symposium, Rick Rule's Symposium in the USA, which Rick runs. What were the key takeaways from that symposium?
Well, first of all, it was a great meeting. So it was a week-long sort of set of workshops and talks and presentations and so on. We were able to present our story directly, not just to the people at the conference, but via live stream. There were, many hundreds of people watching over live stream, and then many hundreds more, thousands indeed, who will look at it on replay through Rick's network. So we've had great reach. We've managed to get our message to a lot of people in one go. We also did a podcast interview with a guy there that Rick works with, who has 92,000 subscribers. So again, really good opportunity for us to reach a new audience. So highly beneficial from our point of view. In terms of the takeaways, I mean, there were a lot of investors there who, like us, think that we are right at the ground floor now of a major bull run in the commodity markets. There was a lot of talk about the shortage of critical minerals. I mean, Robert Friedland, for example, was there, whoever I'm sure people will have heard of, who is very, very inspirational, motivational speaker amongst being highly successful as an investor in his own right. And I mean, he was fascinating on the subject. And I mean, his view is, you've got to pick the right stories, obviously, but you need to invest and hold them. And this is going to be a multi-year cycle. And we completely agree with that. So there was a lot of positive talk about the upturn in the cycle, a lot of talk about critical minerals in particular. We obviously talk about the transition metals, and many of those we're exposed to. Uranium was a big focus, and there were a number of other uranium companies at the meeting. So there was a lot of talk about the power needs of all the part of the decarbonisation trend. But the other thing that stuck out for me also was gold. There were a lot of gold bulls there, people saying that gold could be headed for $3,000 even above, and that there was a lot of sort of motivation. There were people who were worried about global inflation and the monetary system and so on, and seeing gold as a hedge. So you've got a combination of two things. You've got the sort of fundamentals of demand supply imbalance driving the critical mineral commodity prices up, and then you've got this sort of macro, long-term macro dimension which supports the gold price. So all in all, if you're a junior mining company with exposure to gold and battery metals and uranium, which was us, then you're in the right place at the right time. So it was a great meeting, and we got some really good responses.
Okay, so you've been to Rick Rule's Symposium. As viewers and investors, potential investors may know, Rick himself is a famous investor and commentator on the natural resources and the mining industry. He's, of course, through one of his vehicles, an investor in Power Metal Resources. Is that a benefit to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, there's a few things. I'll summarise it in one thing, I think, which I think might help people. Is what he describes Power Metal as is, and I think we talked about this a bit the last time I was here, which is as he calls it, a sort of merchant bank in the natural resources sector. So he sees us, the top co, if you like, as an active investor in our asset set. So we take an asset, we add value to it through methodical, low-cost exploration, and then we seek to monetize that via various routes. So that could be IPOs, which we've obviously talked about with FDR, gold metal, etc. Strategic joint ventures, which is what we're talking about potentially with Malopo, or outright sale, which is something that we've looked at in the past and would look at in the future for certain parts of our portfolio. So it's essentially a different model to straight mining, which is where you discover something and you take it all the way to production. It's more of a merchant banking model in that sense, and that's what he likes. He's made a lot of money in the past. He's extremely encouraging of us to do that, And where we're looking for ways to finance transactions or to look at opportunities where we can add value, he's there as a shareholder and is willing to give advice and help on that. So frankly, for me, to take any of his experience, and just to talk to him about strategy is extremely helpful. And we were able to have plenty of time with him. We had several meetings over the course of the week, and he's a very, very approachable and as you said, a very knowledgeable guy.
Okay, Sean, we've gone through the update. We've gone through your recent visit to the RIC Rules Symposium. Let's look ahead now. We're in the second half of 2023. What can viewers, investors expect? What's the headlines for the rest of the year from Power Metal Resources?
Yes, well, I mean, there's there's a lot really. I mean, the things that people can really look out for and can sort of judge us by, let's say, is we've been very clear that we want to get the First Development Resources IPO done, and that's well underway. And that I'm hoping to get done in the coming months. UEE is the other one, which again we're well underway on. I can't give a date exactly of when we'd expect that to come because these processes take time, but that is underway. We want to also be able to report on our discussions on Malopo. Again, I can't set expectations too directly in terms of exactly when it's going to be, when we will have a deal because it's a movable feast. But we are in discussions with people, and we hope to be able to update shareholders forthwith. So that's corporate activity in the main. I mean, there are other things that could well happen, but those are the things I think we've highlighted. In terms of the exploration program, the uranium portfolio, as I mentioned at the top, that's going to be yielding some results this autumn and summer. So we'll be able to talk about hopefully getting some drill targets ready for an exploration season next year for that. But the other thing that we haven't talked about at all is our investment in Saudi Arabia. So this is a major step for us. And I think as we've said in this announcement and also in a prior one, we've engaged a very well-known and well-established consultant in the region, by which I mean the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Oman, to look at opportunities for us to invest in exploration assets across the Arabian Shield mineral system. So, and that could mean a whole variety of things. It could mean exploration projects of the kind we've done historically. It could mean more potentially revenue generating projects such as tailings reprocessing, for example. It could mean joint ventures with other players. There are all manner of opportunities, but we're making a great start with our relationships there. We're very busy talking to people and deciding what kind of entity we need to be. Do we need to have a local subsidiary, for example, or how that's going to work? And we're planning a roadshow in the region, in both Saudi and Oman, towards the end of September, where we hope to be able to, well, I mean, the goal really would be to hopefully to shake hands on some transactions. But we are in process of looking for those opportunities at the moment, and that will generate a lot of value for us, a lot of news, and a lot of excitement, I hope, for the shareholders.
So lots of news flow to look out for in the rest of the year. Thanks, Sean. That was Sean Wade, Chief Executive of Power Metal Resources, as I said at the top of the show, listed in London on the AIM market with a ticker of POW. That's it for this edition of Blythe Ray Business News. Thanks for watching.